Hello and welcome. Please take a seat, get cosy and enjoy a cup of terror. With me, Stephanie Valentine. Hello my spooky little pumpkins. How are you all? I hope you're keeping well. Thank you for joining me today. If you are new here, A Cup of Terror is a series where I talk about true crime cases, mainly Victorian and historical murder and true crime, or cases that have a dash of the strange, be that supernatural, or to do with the occult, or just something downright odd. So, get a drink, get cosy, I've got my tea ready, and let's get into today's video. So today we are going to talk about Ouija boards. Spooky. Now we all know about Ouija boards. They are an instrument to contact the dead with and have conversations with them. I'm going to give you a brief little history on the Ouija board and then tell you about an infamous case that happened that involved the use of a Ouija. Ouija boards, or at least versions of it, and versions that use automatic writing, have been around for forever, basically. Many ancient cultures used versions of them. The exact origins of using a board to communicate with spirits is unknown. Spiritualism was a massive thing in the Victorian era. The Victorians loved anything spooky or macabre, and mediums and seances were really popular. There were already various talking boards which enabled people to have some sort of conversation with the dead. The French had already invented the planchette, which was originally a little heart-shaped table with 3 legs, and one of the legs was a pencil. The user would place their hands on the table, and the spirit would supposedly use the person to write their message or draw pictures. The Ouija board, as we know it, was created in Baltimore, Maryland, in 1890. A man named Elijah Bond claimed to have created the modern Ouija board by combining the planchette, which he made smaller, with an alphabet board, which also had yes and no and goodbye on it. The planchette would allow the spirits to move it to each letter of the word that it was trying to spell out. He filed for a patent in 1890 and it was approved in 1891. Elijah Bond sold the US distribution rights for the Ouija board to the Kennard Novelty Company, which was a novelty and toy company owned by Charles Kennard. They were sold as a recreational toy designed to provide you with never-ending amusement. For unknown reasons, Charles Kennard was removed from his company in 1891. By 1892, William Fuld, who was originally a foreman in the company, took over as supervisor, and the company changed its name to the Ouija Novelty Company. He also took over production of the boards. He filed for his first talking board patent that same year in 1892, and he eventually started production of his own spirit boards under the name Ouija. Charles Kennard claimed that he got the name Ouija from using the board, and the name came through, and that it was an ancient Egyptian word meaning good luck. William Fuld said that it was simply the French word for yes, oui, combined with the German word for yes, ja, and since then I think if you asked people what Ouija meant, they would most likely tell you that it's the latter explanation. The Ouija board was a hit. Due to increasing demand, William, with his brother Isaac, opened a small Ouija factory in Baltimore in 1899. Even though William never claimed to have invented the Ouija board, he would end up being credited with it, even though it was false. And he didn't exactly help the misinformation, as he would put original Ouija board and inventor on the back of his boards. Sadly, the Fuld brothers eventually broke all contact with each other and refused to speak to each other. There was various arguments over business dealings over the years, and the arguments turned bitter, and there was a lot of bad blood between them, unfortunately. The popularity of the Ouija boards ebbed and flowed over the decades. There were various crazes when suddenly everyone had to have one. There was an occult craze in the 60s, and apparently in 1967, Parker Brothers, who had acquired the company and all its assets in 1966, good timing for them, sold 2 million Ouija boards, beating their usual top seller, Monopoly. Parker Brothers deny that it is anything more than a game. It is famously marketed as a game, but many people do use it to speak to the dead. The other really interesting thing is that the board is patented. It had to go through whatever process that you have to go through to get a patent, and it was approved, which does imply that it does somehow work. But the patent doesn't say how the game works, just that it does. Many people believe that it doesn't contact the dead, and that it's not spirits that are moving the board, but that it is the user's own unconscious that makes them automatically and unknowingly move the planchette, making it seem like it's a ghostly entity that's moving it. A lot of people, however, are very superstitious and fearful about using a Ouija board, even if they are a bit skeptical of the existence of a spirit world. And there are even some that think that the devil is involved. But for the most part, people who have used them haven't tend to witness or receive anything too outlandish or life-changing. There are a few times, though, where messages have come through that have greatly affected people and changed their lives. Sometimes it has brought about profound positive change or inspired them to create wonderful pieces of art, for example. But not all the messages are necessarily for the better. This is the story of Nellie and Herbert Hurd. So, in 1935, in Kansas City, Nellie and Herbert, who was a railroad worker, they were living a normal, regular life. That is, until Nellie got herself a Ouija board. She used it a fair amount, and she found that she was able to contact the dead. Unfortunately, though, the spirit messages that she received weren't good ones. The ghosts told her that her husband, Herbert, who was 77 years old, had been having an affair with the wife of a neighbour. The ghosts also told her that he had $15,000 buried somewhere, but that they didn't know where the exact location was. Nellie hired a private detective to spy on Herbert, but after 5 days, he still hadn't caught Herbert engaged in any nefarious activity, and the detective told Nellie that the spirits were liars. She told him he was blind and she fired him. She sought advice from her Ouija board as to what to do next. The spirits told her that the only way to get the information was to torture her husband for the truth. While Herbert slept, Nellie would creep into his bedroom and she would hit him on the head with the butt of one of her pistols. When he eventually came to, he'd have his feet and hands tied to the bedstead. This happened on a nightly basis, and when Herbert woke up each time, there would be a new form of torture that he would be subjected to from his wife. Sometimes it was a knotted rope, which she would use to savagely beat him with. Sometimes it was a hot iron pressed and burned into his skin. Sometimes she would stab him with a knife. If Herbert yelled too loudly from the pain, she would hit him and make him unconscious with a pistol. This continued for a while. Nellie torturing her husband and attempting to force a confession out of him about the affair and the buried treasure. Eventually, Herbert did confess to the affair and that it was true about the buried treasure, but he had dug it all up and gave it all to the other woman. But his confession was just a lie. None of it was true. But Herbert hoped that this confession would placate the spirits and his wife, and that he would be left in peace. Unfortunately, it didn't work. He snapped, and in desperation, he took one of Nellie's pistols and shot her 3 times, killing her. So was it spirits who had maliciously told Nellie to torture her husband? Or was it all just in her head? Delusions? Or her subconscious that had manifested themselves when she had used the Ouija board? I guess we will never know. Before I end the video, I found a very interesting story from Edmund C. Grus's book, The Ouija Board, A Doorway to the Occult, and I wanted to share this story with you. Okay, so there are 4 college girls and they were playing with a Ouija board and they asked it when they would die. Not something that I would ask, to be perfectly honest. The board gave 3 of them various dates from quite far into the future, 40, 50, 60 years ahead. So far, so good. Unfortunately, the 4th girl ended up getting a date later that same year, and spookily, on the very date that the board gave, the young woman died in a car crash. Ooh, it gives me the creeps. Ooh. I've never used a Ouija board. I don't know if I would be open to it. Maybe not. But you see, I watch a lot of horror movies, and part of me is worried that I'd get stuck with an evil spirit that would try to, it would haunt me and try to kill me. I totally believe in ghosts, as you know, and witchcraft, and communicating with the dead doesn't frighten me. I mean, you know, for those that think it's some sort of devil worship, a lot of us do it. When we talk to our loved ones that have passed, when we have conversations with them at their graves, for example. But there is just something about Ouija boards. It just kind of freak me out. Again, I do think it's all those horror movies that are to blame. Yeah, I'm definitely one of those ones that are a bit superstitious about them. Have any of you used one? And if you did you get any messages? Any movements? Anything weird that happened when you used one? Thank you for hanging out with me today and spending time watching this. I really appreciate it. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. Subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. I do have a second channel where I'm now posting all of my convention vlogs and horror movie reviews. So subscribe to that channel as well if you like that sort of thing. But for now, it's a goodbye from me. And join me next time for another Cup of Terror. And remember, if you do use a Ouija board, remember to always say goodbye when you're done playing.